Welcome everyone to Cyber Harassment Support. I'm Varsha Vaishali, founder president of Cyber Harassment Support, also known as CHS. Today I'm honored to welcome Queenter Mbori from Association of Media Women in Kenya, AMWIK. AMWIK has been doing important work in Kenya to promote women's voice in media, gender responsive journalism, leadership, digital safety, and women's safety and privacy online. At CHS, our mission is to promote digital dignity, cyber harassment awareness, victim support, and safer online spaces. This conversation brings us together two important themes: media responsibility and online safety. We will discuss how digital platforms are shaping public life, how women, girls experience online harm, the role of media in awareness, and how CHS and AMWIK can collaborate to strengthen digital safety and dignity. This is an awareness conversation, not legal advice. The goal is to keep it practical, public friendly, and useful for communities. Quinter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Varsha. Thank you. It's good to see you. Yes, thank you, Varsha, once again. I'm very glad to be here and to join you in this very important conversation. So my name is Queenter Mbori, as you'd mentioned. I work at the Association of Media Women in Kenya, popularly known as AMWIK. And AMWIK is the national membership association for women in the media. We have presence. Kenya has about 47 regions or counties. So we have presence across the 47 counties, and our members comprise women in legacy media, women in digital media. We have media practitioners. These are people who primarily do not have background in journalism, but they're practicing journalism and content creation. We have members who are students in media training institutions. We also have members who are the trainers of the journalists in the media training institutions, researchers, media professionals, content creators, influencers, as well as those in related industries such as communications and PR. AMWIK has been around for quite a while, for about 43 years, since 1982. And the history is actually very interesting because AMWIK was established by a group of courageous women in the media who were not comfortable with the status quo. They were not happy with the way women were represented in the media and by the media. And so they collaborated to start this organization that has continued to impact thousands and thousands of women in this country. And we are able to see the progress they're making, especially in key decision-making roles in politics and other leadership positions. But most importantly, AMWIK has been a very powerful force in terms of just creating an enabling environment for majority of women in the country, in Kenya, in the world over. Work is primarily programmatic, and our thematic areas are about 5, as you mentioned. One is on media development and membership. We are very, very passionate about creating awareness around, different thematic areas in the media. And therefore, we do a lot of work on capacitating journalists, women human rights defenders, politicians, on different thematic areas, bearing in mind that media is not gender sensitive. I don't know whether things are different in Canada, but in Kenya, media is not gender sensitive and not gender transformative. So AMWIK, at the core of our responsibility, is to ensure that we promote gender responsive and gender transformative reporting. But over and above that, we also focus on the themes or the areas where we feel our membership are secluded. And so we are passionate about what we call the technical thematic areas: politics, investigative reporting, business, and so on and so forth. So we are very big on just creating capacities of our members and indeed our other stakeholders. We also focus on women's economic empowerment, and basically because we understand that when a woman is economically empowered, then they can shake and transform societies, and they can transform their families. And so we use our platforms and our networks to discuss issues around economic empowerment. We pool resources and networks indeed to make sure that policies around establishing the wellness and the well-being of women are discussed right up to Parliament. Thirdly, we also focus on gender and governance. And basically, our desire is one. We want to ensure that our voices are heard at decision-making tables, and there is no better place to have that, discussed other than in critical political positions. And so, we work very, very closely with women leaders, women aspiring leaders, established leaders, and organizations that support women in politics, because we believe that when we empower women and they are in the correct rooms and the correct tables, then they'll be able to advocate for the entire fraternity of women in the country. Fourthly, we also focus on sexual reproductive health and rights, and basically still using our networks and our resources, we give visibility to issues around access to reproductive health services. We talk about the same issues, just creating media awareness around it, bearing in mind that it is rarely a news agenda, and therefore we try to use our platforms to elevate these discussions to the duty bearers, and where key decisions will be made, especially touching on the sexual reproductive health aspects. But critically, we are very passionate about eliminating sexual harassment in the media industry. And so at AMWIK, we lead the gender committee. We have a coalition of media actors called Kenya Media Sector Working Group. So we lead the gender committee that has been mandated to ensure that there is zero tolerance to sexual harassment in the media industry in Kenya. And there's a lot of work that has gone behind the scenes on this, including developing a model sexual harassment policy in partnership with organizations such as Journalists for Human Rights. And this model sexual harassment policy, we've been implementing it across different media houses. Currently, we are talking about 20 media houses who have adopted the model sexual harassment policy, and we are still counting, because we have hundreds of media organizations in this country who are still oblivious of the fact that sexual harassment is affecting press freedom in the industry. And if you're able to eliminate it, then we'll be able to eliminate many other issues. And finally, Varsha, we also focus on digital rights and safety and rights and security. We are also working very closely with not only journalists, but all the women with prominent public lives to safeguard them, give them practical skills and resources that they can use to safeguard their online interaction and activity. Back to you, Varsha. Media is very powerful because it not only mirrors society, but it also keeps society accountable. So we set agenda, but we also build that agenda. The fact of the matter is that many people rely on the media for information. When they see something in the news or on the online, on the digital platforms, they take it as the ultimate truth. That is how powerful media is. Okay? So in terms of using the media as a social agenda, I always say that we have to be very intentional about the kind of information that we purvey on media platforms. It needs to be factual. It needs to be balanced. It needs to cater to all perspectives, including the gendered perspectives, because a lot of the public and society and citizens rely on the media as their source of information that they can use to make correct choices about different things that are happening in society. So that is how powerful media is. And precisely that is why we advocate for media that is not only truthful, but also sensitive, media that also upholds gender transformative reporting. Because like I said, I don't know what happens in Canada, but Kenya, we live from a very patriarchal society. There's a lot of stereotypes and biases and misconceptions about women generally, women in leadership, women who are holding key positions and influential positions in society. And so the media has been misused or abused to sort of misrepresent the status and the contribution of women in society. So the challenge that we are always posing to media organizations and journalists is we need to stand for the truth. And if you're looking at a society that has approximately half of the society is men, is made up of men, and the other half is also made up of women. So why are we always misrepresenting half of the global population? So we are always challenging media organizations, one, to develop policies that are representative of the global population and constituencies. And we are not just talking about men and women, because we have other minority organizations and groups that are also overlooked by the media, the youth, the children, and other minority groups. So media can transform the perceptions. Media has the capacity to rewrite and reshape narratives that will give us the actual representation of what we're talking about. One thing about media, again, is its ability to push not just for the truth, but to push for the contribution of everyone in society. I know there are many organizations in many countries that are women-led. I know there are many contributions, very meaningful contributions that have been made by women and other minority groups. Unfortunately, the media tends to sideline these contributions, and therefore what we see, what the narratives that are being shaped are the ones that are one-sided. So it plays such a powerful role that in the absence of balance, in the absence of truth, when we have a lot of misinformation, disinformation, being pervaded on the digital platforms, then we are not doing justice. We are not talking about the truth. We are not giving the full representation of the matters as they are. So I always say, or rather I read somewhere that he who controls the media controls the mind. So it is just as basic as that. We need to ensure, once we have that at the back of our mind, then we'll be in a position now to know how critical the role media plays in society, and we can use it to push for actual representation. If women are doing well, if men are doing well, I think that is the information that we need to tell out there. At the same time, if there are perhaps certain injustices towards human rights, that is the information that we need to have out there. That is how critical the role of media is.
Yeah, that is such an important point because the way stories are told can either create understanding or deepen harm. And inclusivity is a problem across the globe. It's not only Kenya, but it's a problem. And not only for women, for all the marginalized group, it's a problem. But with that, let's now move into online safety. Today, many women are using digital platforms. As you said, that is the most important platform right now for journalism, advocacy, leadership, education, business, public communication. But with visibility also comes risk. Why has digital safety become such an important issue for women journalists, communicators, and public facing women?
Yeah, a very good question, Varsha. Perhaps I can start by just giving a few statistics that were released recently by our media regulator called Media Council of Kenya. And it showed that currently, especially in Kenya, majority of the public, they use social media as their source of news, overtaking the legacy media. I'm talking about newspapers and the other broadcast channels such as radio and the rest. So that already shows you that everybody goes on the digital platform as their main source of information. So that is one reason why digital platforms are very critical for women journalists, because what we are fighting for is inclusivity. Even though we still have, the gender digital divides and gaps, what I always say is that as long as we have an opportunity, the digital platforms is also an enabler, because it does not have the bureaucracies and the very difficult environment that legacy media perhaps possess. When you have a phone and maybe basic internet, that is all you need, and maybe just a bit of training and information around using the digital platforms and tools, you're good to go. And so it is an enabling environment. It's an enabling platform for journalists and women human rights defenders and women with prominent public lives. Similarly, mainstream, as I mentioned, is not gender sensitive. Mainstream tends to give a lot of opportunities to those who are readily available, those who do not have pre-existing challenges. You see, if you invited two people to an interview today, one is a man and the other one is a woman, the man will easily show up for the interview without giving it much thought. But the woman will have to start thinking about other responsibilities. Perhaps she has children to pick from school, or she has, had to run a few errands in the marketplace. So there's an added layer of responsibility that these two personalities will have. So legacy media will obviously go for the person who is readily available at that particular time, because they also need to, carry their content immediately. They don't have time to wait, isn't it? So what we've realized is we end up with, the manuals and the same faces of experts, in legacy media. But the digital platform is an environment which I can control on my terms. I can decide to go on Facebook Live or Instagram Live after I've sent my children to sleep and we've done the homework, isn't it? And I will still engage my community. It is that platform that we can use to narrow the gender gaps that we have experienced, not only with legacy media, but also we can use it to push our agenda, to build our brands as we wait to navigate the very patriarchal and difficult environment that legacy and mainstream media have. Okay. Similarly, the thing about digital platforms, just recently, Varsha, AMWIK released a report on the state of women in media in Kenya. And sadly, from that report, only 2.4% of women are media owners or are running the business of media. That is such a small, disappointing number. Similarly, only about 3.7% are holding editorial leadership in media houses. Okay, it's the same discussion we're having about inclusivity. You see, when you do the difference, the number is quite huge. And this is because majority of the mainstream media organizations do not have the correct or the enabling environment that supports women to advance in their leadership, in their quest for leadership. Now, we can use digital platforms to minimize or to close these gaps, because it means that with me as Queenter and my mobile phone and my internet, I can actually run a YouTube channel, I can run a podcast, I can even start a blog. And essentially, if I am able to, follow through with the registration and all, with a bit of resources and training, then who knows, in the next maybe 2-3 years, we'll have even a growth in terms of women who own the media houses. So I feel like it is an economic empowerment tool. It is also a tool that can actually help us correct some of the historical wrongs that we've been grappling with for ages. But of course, not without challenges, and I'm sure we are going to discuss those challenges.
With that, I completely agree that technology has given us empowerment. And if we have a vision, then we can actually bring in change. And the beauty is that you are sitting somewhere in Kenya and I'm in Canada and we are exchanging ideas. That's such a beautiful experience for me. But with this, there comes some challenges as well. Can you tell me the important challenges that women journalists face because of technology or online harm?
Yeah, we did another. We did a survey at AMWIK. We do a lot of our activities are evidence based. We do evidence based programs because we believe that when you have numbers, you're listened to. When you have numbers, you almost have a diagnosis to a challenge. And so we do a lot of researches and surveys and reports just to try and get to the bottom of certain issues. And so in 2024, we commissioned a research on technology-facilitated gender-based violence on women with public prominent lives. And we established that about 60% of the respondents had actually experienced one form or the other of technology-facilitated gender-based violence, which is very sad. The other bit that came from that research is that many organizations did not have the requisite policies that govern journalists and media professionals in their work on the online space. Some organizations did not even, they had the policies, but they did not even create awareness on these policies. So they were basically just, work that was collecting dust somewhere, perhaps on the respective HR's shelf. One thing that also came from that research is that 40% of the respondents believed that TFGBV is a crime. No, is wrong, but it's not a crime. Yeah, is wrong, but it's not a crime. So I'm looking at it as in terms of the level of awareness and how this issue is trivialized by the public. Hence, maybe this explains the prevalence rates at 60%. I don't think this is very far from the global statistics, which pointed out, I think there's a study that was done by UNESCO that pointed out that about 73.47 or thereabout of journalists in Kenya have experienced some form of online violence. And so getting deeper into the research, some of the forms of the abuse that the journalists were facing, one was image-based abuse, or popularly known as, I think it's also, in other terms, it's referred to as, revenge porn, where people basically they take your intimate photos and they share online for one reason or the other, maybe marking the end of a relationship or disillusionment, or something didn't work, or just being malicious. So there was image-based abuse coming at the top, and I'm not surprised because we have experienced a lot of that in our country. I'm sure by now you are aware that we are having elections, perhaps in less than a year's time. No, in about a year's time, about because it's in 2027, around August. So about in a year's time. So there's a lot of that happening in this country right now, particularly abuse, TFGBV, directed towards not just journalists, but also other women who are, public facing. So there was the image-based abuse, there was harassment and threats that I've also experienced myself, where you're just being harassed for the sake of it. You're being harassed because you're a woman. So being a woman alone is a threat, is a risk factor, and also being harassed because of your work. You post something about work, and then somebody picks it up from there and they want to use it to harass you. There's a lot of harassment in private social media platforms, the WhatsApp. Actually, our research revealed that the most prevalence was happening on WhatsApp, and then Facebook, and then the X. So perhaps it's because of the proximity and the fact that people think that, on the WhatsApp and these other social media platforms, you can get away with murder. Nobody will read. It's not really as public as the rest. So again, there was we talked about image-based abuse, the threats and harassment, doxxing, and we've seen quite a lot of these. In fact, in 2024, when our country was going through a rough patch during the anti-finance bill protest, majority of journalists, their contacts were displayed on the online platforms. And in Kenya, they said salimia, like greetings. That is the translation. So they were greeted, quote unquote. They received thousands and thousands of, harassing messages from complete strangers because somebody somewhere who had your mobile, maybe mobile number, decided to share your information without your consent. So we see a lot of that. And now, as we approach the 2027 elections in Kenya, my fear and my worry is we have seen again a lot of an upsurge of these incidences on the online platforms. And now, what is even more worrying is the use of artificial intelligence. Many people now have access to AI. And so we've seen a lot of deepfake videos and, people basically just coming up with images, AI images that are harassing and abusive towards journalists and public leaders and politicians. So these are some of the cases that we are dealing with right now, and we're hoping that perhaps we collaboratively, maybe with other organizations, we can actually be able to, first of all, create a lot of awareness and digital literacy to the public. Unfortunately, as we mentioned, the media is powerful, and many people cannot detect AI content. So when they see it on the media platforms, they think it is the truth. While these are doctored images, these are doctored videos, and so it continues to perpetuate already pre-existing stereotypes and gender-based violence. And
Completely understand what you say. While we were speaking, I was thinking of few points. Women, as a mother, as a wife, is always accepted in the society if she's related to something. But women as a leader, as an independent citizen who has a view, is not accepted. Even if she is respected, but it's very difficult for people to openly appreciate a woman. And this kind of online harassment can actually affect women confidence, visibility, leadership, participation in public conversations, being 50 of the global population. Women confidence, visibility, leadership, and participation in public conversation. How is it being affected by this online abuse?
I'll respond to that question from a personal experience. As I mentioned, I have personally I'm a survivor of technology facilitated gender-based violence. And so what that has done to my interaction, despite my level of awareness, people honestly don't understand the impact of TFGBV on professional life, on personal life, and the fact that TFGBV not only affects you, it affects the people in your network, because the moment you are a subject of online abuse or an online discussion, your colleagues will reach out to you. They're worried. Your family will reach out to you because they're worried. So it becomes a communal problem. It is not just a one-person problem. It is a societal problem. So that is the complexity of TFGBV, that you may be the victim, but everybody in your circle somehow feels like they have to be now more responsible. They have to continually reach out to you and call you to check on you, because the moment they see your image has been uploaded on the online platform, they will call you and ask you, are you okay? You understand? So that is how complex this matter gets. But back to my point, after facing abuse, I'm very, very critical of myself. Before I post anything online, sometimes I even have to sleep on it, because I have to think about perhaps how other people will react to it. You understand? This never used to be the case. I mean, mostly use my social media platforms for work, for professional visibility, and my digital footprint is largely around my work. So I've become extremely protective about the people closest to me, my family, my private life, because I'm worried about how that information will be misused by, the keyboard warriors and the rest. Okay? So you can imagine I am at a level where I'm well aware of TFGBV and the forms and, even the channels I can follow to seek, legal redress in the event that incidences of TFGBV happen. So you can imagine how the incidences of TFGBV affect women who do not have the caliber of information that I have. They are not aware, they're not empowered, they're not even emotionally and psychologically prepared for the weight of TFGBV abuse on, their circles, on their lives. Are not aware of it. So when it hits them, one, what happens? They go silent. There are people who have completely left the digital spaces because they cannot stand the abuse. And to me, especially to me and as well as journalists who use digital platforms as the main source of livelihoods, when you get out of the digital platforms where you work, where you earn your pay, that completely it compromises your economic empowerment. All right, you do not have a job anymore. So somehow it creates other complex problems around it, and so it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult for journalists and for women for prominent women or women in leadership to handle the complex nature of the impact that TFGBV brings upon their life. The other bit, of course, is what I'd mentioned earlier, and that is the mental health challenges, because many people have become depressive because they cannot stand the level of abuse. Sometimes it comes in so many layers, and it goes on for days and months. 1 week, 2 weeks, you're still subject of discussion on the digital platforms. Obviously, that is bound to knock you off. You will sink into some form of depression. You will quit the digital spaces. You'll lock yourself in. You will turn off your phone. It has a direct impact in your level of productivity. And so it becomes very, very difficult for journalists whose work is to inform the public. They're in the limelight all the time. So the moment you get out of that space, your work is compromised, your economic prowess is compromised. your mental health is compromised. So it becomes very, very difficult to survive, especially in an environment where we're talking about media sustainability, media organizations are laying off, people in their drones. So it becomes, and women are the worst affected. So you still have to find a way to survive. It's not very easy. And so we've been having some kind of discussions, because at AMWIK we believe in coming up with preventive measures. We anticipate that TFGBV will happen at some point or the other, and therefore we like preparing our journalists, giving them basic training on digital hygiene, digital footprint, building digital resilience, so that when the abuse happens, they are well prepared for it. They can employ some of the basic skills, such as just blocking. When somebody harasses you, you can actually block, you can report, you can develop, password, you can monitor your online interaction, you can take a break from time to time from the online platforms just to maintain your sanity. So these are just basic skills and resources that we equip our journalists and our stakeholders with. We have a digital safety and security handbook, which is easily available on our digital platform. We create awareness through programming, podcasts. We constantly carry on with our researches just to ensure that we address these issues. It is very complex. We hold duty bearers accountable. When we have forums, particularly with the big tech, we like holding them accountable and asking them to support us, so that we can manage this infodemic that the world is experiencing. So yeah, Varsha, those would be my sentiments to that question.
Yeah, very sad actually. When I listen to this and when I understand this, in democracy, media is one of the important pillars. And if we are not able to protect that, then it becomes very bad to justice and where the society is going to. With that, I am coming up with some thoughts around if we understand technology based abuse or this kind of issues, why do victims stay silent? We are organizations like CHS or AMWIK, we are trying to make aware, we are saying that we have victim support, government has laws around it, but why do victims stay silent to this abuse?
One is, of course, the issue around TFGBV has been trivialized. It's not given a lot of seriousness. And therefore, like I mentioned, if 40% of our respondents think it's a crime, it's wrong, but it's not a crime. So, of course, there's still lack of awareness around it. We don't even have a definition of it in our laws in Kenya. We have laws around cyber security and harassment, but we do not have a definition of what technology facilitated gender-based violence is. So this, of course, affects the judicial systems and outcomes and processes. So you might find yourself going to report a case of TFGBV. The law enforcers are not even aware of what it is. They don't know what to call it. They don't know how to report it and record it. So that lack of awareness has also led to deepen the stigma around TFGBV, because if you feel violated and you report it and there's nothing that is happening around it, most of the time the survivors and the victims, they prefer to just go back to their corner and keep quiet, because there are people who have reported and they've been asked for evidence. You see, if, for example, you are harassed and then your harasser decided to, terminate the evidence, it becomes very difficult to even collect and preserve that data. So there's still a lot of work to do in terms of just creating awareness around this issue, because with awareness, then it is easy for somebody to know that I have been, I've been abused. This is the form of abuse that has happened to me. And this is what I need to do. Perhaps I need to take a screenshot. I need to keep emails. I need to do all of that. So in the absence of information, then there's a lot of misinformation. Okay. Now, misinformation, like I said, it continues to perpetuate stigma around TFGBV. And therefore, survivors don't feel safe. They're not confident in the system to manage the process. Similarly, going through our legal systems is also very costly. It's not cheap. So many people do not have the resources to follow through with their cases to the end. And so somewhere down the line, they give up on it. And then there also, there's counter harassment with TFGBV. Sometimes it's very difficult to collect evidence, especially when you're interacting with the big tech organizations. The process is long and tiring. Perhaps maybe we can ask our viewers if some of them have tried maybe reporting an incident on the social platforms, and how long and what happened. Was there any conclusive result from it? What happened? How long did the procedure take? Because sometimes something as basic as just deleting an account becomes very difficult for the big tech, because they're also in business. The digital platform is a multi-billion dollar business enterprise and platform. And so sometimes you don't want to tell me, Varsha, the big tech organizations cannot tell that this is an abusive content, this is an abusive image, okay, even after numerous attempts of reporting. So again, we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to be honest with the big tech companies to prioritize humanity over business, because many people are perishing because of numerous forms of abuse that the big tech organizations have allowed to happen. In fact, if you follow through with their algorithms, most viral content are abusive content.
Yeah.
They're unethical content. They're dehumanizing content. Do you want to tell me that they are not aware that they are making, like they do not have the apparatus or the know-how to detect what abusive content is? This for me doesn't make sense. So until we have those very honest discussions with ourselves, with the big tech organizations, with media organizations, some of them don't even have policies. How do you expect your journalists to be protected? You don't even have an in-house policy, which I believe is the first line of defense. Before we even get to the big tech organizations, can we have some form of protective mechanisms in the small spaces that our journalists and media professionals work? And then now we can elevate it to our governments to not only enforce laws, but also review our laws to catch up with technology and AI, because this thing is moving very fast. And some of our laws and legal frameworks are as old as they come. So we need to work with speed. And then finally, now we can work with different, the big tech organizations to enhance digital literacy program, information sessions, public forums where we just educate everyone. I like that. From time to time, I see WhatsApp sending me messages around my safety and privacy. That kind of thing. It goes a long way because, like I mentioned, to some of our online consumers, what they see is what they believe in. So you send some false information, they're going to believe it. You tell them that if they drink, elephant blood, they get cured of cancer. They will look for an elephant and they will try and drink that blood because they believe it is the ultimate truth. So it is not a one man's job. We must work collaboratively to ensure that we minimize technology. We eliminate TFGBV on different platforms.
Yes, as rightly said, it is a multidisciplinary thing, and tech companies hold an important role. Safety by design and privacy by design are very important in today's. As things are changing, I'll give you one example from my experience, and I'll be just collecting different dots. So when you say there is no definition, that's pretty much true. Suppose a woman who has been an influencer and she's earning her living through that, and somebody comes and gives a hurtful comment or tries to bully her, and others see that and try to put in more comments on that, and that keeps on sharing, and when you report the platform might say it's freedom of speech.
Mhm.
And when you report the police might say that there is no physical harm, there is no criminal activity happening. How can we intervene? That is where it is so important that we have correct definition around this kind of harassment.
Yeah.
And for anyone who is listening to us today, one important message is, if you're facing online harassment, do not panic and do not rush to delete everything. Try to preserve evidence and avoid emotional back and forth with the abuser, and seek trusted support before escalating it publicly. And with that, I would like to know how journalists and media organizations report on cyber harassment like sextortion, online abuse, gender based violence in a responsible and victim sensitive way.
Yeah, Varsha, like I said, one of the challenges we're experiencing is we are still creating awareness around it. And it's something that it's not been taken seriously, perhaps because of its very nature. Mostly affects most women, and in our African newsrooms, matters around women are not given the attention they deserve. You'll find I've seen a bit of progress, particularly in newsrooms in the region, in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania. They're establishing, gender units, which are now given the sole responsibility of focusing on gender content. So even though it's not enough, I feel like this is something that it's a step in the right direction. It's even though it is tokenism, I feel like it's better than nothing. Half loaf is better than no loaf at all. But what we are advocating for is, one, the correct editorial policy that balances all content, not just certain issues at the expense of others. I know there's a lot of push and demand for politics. There's a lot of demand maybe for news around business, but issues on sexual reproductive health and rights, issues on GBV, issues on TFGBV are rarely given much attention. But we have seen a lot of, we've done a lot of training, particularly from us at AMWIK. We built a lot of capacities. We've worked with not only journalists, but also women human rights defenders as well as politicians. One, to build their capacities. It's very important for us, for them to understand, one, that TFGBV is an issue. Okay? Two, we're also pushing for them to hold duty bearers accountable. Duty bearers, I mean government, media regulators, media owners, to hold them, the big tech organizations, to hold them accountable in terms of just asking them the tough questions. We already have certain regulations and regulatory frameworks. So what we're asking is, how far? What is going on? So that is also something that we're pushing for in the news agenda. Finally, the other thing that we are pushing for is on just ensuring that we have sustained reporting. Okay, we do not just focus on. We don't make it a one-off. When you're celebrating World Mental Health Day, is when you're talking about International Women's Day or 16 days of gender activism, is when we focus on these issues. We want it to be a regular, sustained news agenda that is given the amount of focus, resources, and budgeting as the rest. So such that we can have investigative reporting on TFGBV, we can have a regular news agenda on TFGBV, and so on and so forth. So these are sustained efforts. And maybe one more thing is we are actually working collaboratively with the different organizations to ensure that they are able to support us in terms of funding, because funding is also a big deal. We media organizations right now are battling with the sustainability issues, is crisis in terms of employment. So we are working with different organizations to support this conversation and this agenda, at least to give it the visibility that it deserves. Yeah, my final parting shot would be, one, we as media professionals, we have the power of the pen, we have the power of the microphone, and now we have the power of digital platforms. My final call would be, let us use all these platforms, all these things, all these resources in our hands to shout about the impact of TFGBV, because it is affecting us, it is affecting our livelihood. And the best thing we can do is at least use our resources to create awareness and to ensure that matters TFGBV, matters awareness, they get to the right stakeholder. We hold very powerful tools that we can use to give visibility to this issue and eliminate it completely from our work environment. Secondly, to media houses, let's come up with policies that support our professionals, our employees, policies that support their well-being as well. Many of them actually are facing traumatic episodes because of the nature of work. Now, that coupled with online abuse and TFGBV, it is something that is perhaps maybe too much for them to handle. So we need to come up with initiatives and programs and policies that support the well-being of our employees because ultimately we need them. They are doing the hard labor for us. So the best we can do is ensure that they are well protected. Finally, is to journalists and media professionals. The digital platform is a wonderful platform for us to eliminate gendered discrimination. And so, on one hand, we can use it. Let us exploit it to give visibility to our brand. Let's use it to empower ourselves economically. Let us use it to push for our campaigns and digital visibility and footprints. But let's do it with caution. We need to ensure that we are well informed in terms of technology facilitating gender-based violence. We need to build our digital resilience to ensure that we are not intimidated. We need to push back, because the keyboard warriors, they will not stop, but we have to continually push back to ensure that we use these platforms for our good. Thank you, Vash.
Thank you so much, Queenter, for sharing your work and your insight. Today's conversation reminds us that media, digital safety, dignity are deeply connected. When women and young people are safe online, they can speak, lead, create, report, and participate more freely. At Cyber Harassment Support, we are honored to explore collaboration with AMWIK. Together, we hope to continue building awareness, strengthening digital safety, and promoting a culture where every voice can be heard with dignity and respect. Thank you, everyone who has joined us. This is Varsha Vaishali from Cyber Harassment Support, empowering every voice, ending cyber silence, because every click is thank you.
Thank you very much, Vash.